A common question that I get asked a lot, and it's normal, is how to deal with traumatic events, past trauma, or flashbacks, or hurtful memories that sometimes come back. And this is part of the journey of healing the past. And I'm gonna discuss how you can do that carefully, why it needs to be validated, why it matters, and you can pick which steps make sense for you and start practicing them. So stay tuned. So if you have childhood trauma, emotional trauma, and you want to recover and learn to manage it, if trauma recovery is really possible. So first I would like to make sure I mention that sometimes trauma doesn't necessarily require like a big traumatic event. We're all unique and different. We're complex. We're different as human beings. We are raised in different environments with different beliefs, depending where we were born and things like that, which is part of our conditioning. If we are not aware of it, it could dictate our life destiny unless we take charge, right? Sometimes these traumatic events generate dramatic memory imprints in our brain because they were so strong. And sometimes just things that happen that we don't think are traumatizing have that same effect in our brain chemistry. Sometimes it's very hard for positive emotions to stay with us because they don't generate that strong reaction chemically in our brain. So we have to practice like a brain exercise kind of way to stay in those moments and practice it. And I love to discuss things from the science point of view, and because of personal development nature, I've been pulled to learn a lot about neuroscience and how the brain functions. So I learned, and it made sense that in our childhood until we are 8, we start to process our own thinking. So until we're 8, we're basically just navigating the world through feelings. So what that does is that since we are just navigating with our feelings, sometimes things that happen to us, we don't have a label for them. We don't have a name for it. We don't know how to describe them as children, as toddlers, as little kid. So this creates these memory imprints in our brain, especially if they're traumatic. So what happens now is that now as adults, sometimes certain events, because the way we navigate the world is through our unconscious, we think we're in control, but the subconscious and the unconscious are also reading what's happening around us. So certain events trigger us and trigger those past events that we probably don't really remember, or we do sometimes, and they evoke those feelings. And then now as adults, we don't know how to describe them. We don't know where they come from sometimes. And that's where those feelings come from, because they were generated in a time when we couldn't label them. We couldn't. So as adults, we don't know how to call them. We just know the feelings. Before you address the past, you have to be very careful. First, you're not going to the past just to rehash an old pain and recreate the trauma. Be careful not to start ruminating on those memories, on those flashbacks, because that's a mental exercise that you are creating connections in your brain to keep making it stronger. And I will highly recommend EFT. So you want to validate those memories, but not in a way or with no purpose. So you just have to have a purpose for visiting them. You are not just to rehash an old wound. So you're intentionally just trying to find and hear the story and see what happened, just to find if there's any patterns in it that are repeating in your present life today. if there are any beliefs that were made for you to be embedded within you that are no longer serving you for your best life, if there are behaviors that could come from or that could originate from that, you can spot them and try to cope with them healthier and to talk to yourself, I see why I'm doing this and I'm no longer going to do it. If there's any dysfunctional cycles that could be originating from them or beliefs, those intentions very clearly, then you can visit. Because these memories, this emotional trauma, it's showing up today and gives you clues. It's guiding you. It would be purposeful if you use it as to find clues on why you get triggered at certain events or certain words or things. It's a clue to understand your triggers. So how do we heal the past? Very important here. What happens when we ignore our past hurts or that child, for example, in the past, um, we unfortunately, until we do validate it and hear it and heal those past wounds, unfortunately it's a cycle that's going to keep repeating itself over and over again until we do. And that's why it's a crucial step, and that's why so many people, including myself, sometimes in the past, I know I stay stuck and I couldn't understand why things kept happening over and over again, like the same traumatic experiences. So it's a cycle that never ends until we decide that we're going to stop it by healing the past. And when we don't, what happens is that we're suppressing it, right? We're shutting the door on it. And that suppression can have very serious consequences. One of them is that it could hurt your body health. So it depends on the person, right? But when you suppress it, you could be taking all those hurts, all those pains, all those hurtful memories, because you don't want to address them, so you suppress them, and it could hurt your health. It could go to your organs, and it will manifest with some diseases. Another risk is that you can be recreating it unconsciously. And this is the cruelest thing that we can do to ourselves, because since we are not addressing it, we're suppressing it, it stays in our subconscious and it's going to keep trying to show up, so you address it. So we're unconsciously going to attract people that do the same things with events and things like that. That's why it's a very unhealthy cycle to stay in, because it's just going to keep recycling until you address it. The other reason why it's important to address the past is because you can turn into a ticking bomb, because you're suppressing these feelings and emotions and you're just taking it in, and then suddenly one day something is going to trigger you that's related to it, and you're just going to explode like a volcano, or you are going to shatter into little pieces, broken, sad. One little thing will just torn you apart, and that's what this suppression does. So to treat childhood trauma, one of the ways, validate that inner child. Hear it, because that child still lives within you. So you can start practicing treating it, your inner child, like you would your best friend. So you talk to yourself in your head, in your thoughts, and you treat it like you would your best friend. So here we go back, for example, to what I was talking about in the beginning. If that inner child was deprived, you do the opposite now with yourself, with that inner child within you. Then you make sure it's not deprived. If it was hurt a lot in a certain way when it was a child, you make sure you don't do that to your inner child, to yourself anymore. If that child was neglected, then make sure you don't neglect yourself. If that child was abused, make sure you're not abusing yourself in your present today. Make sure that people also are not abusing. You're going to be there for that child. If that child was made to feel inadequate or like something was wrong, inherently wrong with him or her, now you're going to be there for that inner child, and you're going to You can practice affirmations. I always talk about the queen of affirmations, my favorite, Louise Hay. You can start practicing talking to that inner child with those words. And if that child, for example, was not loved, not accepted, then now you can practice an affirmation. You can even do EFT while doing it too, which makes it even better. And you can watch my video on EFT if you don't know how to do it or how it works. But you can do some tapping and start practicing talking to that inner child and say, I love you unconditionally. I am here for you, and you are safe, and I accept you, and I love you just like you are unconditionally. And you can practice this. And you can also talk to your inner child when you look at yourself in the mirror and practice saying loving messages to yourself, to that inner child, still listening, still alive within you, paying attention to everything that you do. So one of the first very important steps to heal the past is to love our inner child. And I go more in detail and a lot more in depth because there's so many things around this topic, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to give you some key very important points. But if you want to really dive in, this is module 2 of my signature program, the Emotional Resilience Roadmap, which you can find out more when you visit bossofmyfeelings.com. One way that you can start is by journaling, because journaling, at the moment you might read it and be like, there's nothing here. You're just going to read it and see that it's just, like a diary of your events of the day. And for you, it's like not that relevant right now. But the secret is to do it consistently for at least a couple weeks. And then you go back to that. And then you're going to track patterns. You're going to see certain things that repeated and what triggered them, what caused them, and what's repeating. And then you'll see patterns and you'll learn your triggers. You'll be able to spot them easily when you journal. And also journaling is very healing. Also when you journal, you might be able to spot if there's limiting beliefs, things that are limiting you now and are no longer true that they made you believe. Then you can ask yourself, how is this believing this enriching my life? Another tip is mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice that you consciously choose to practice that brings you to the present moment. So how is this going to heal my past? Well, you can, because then you can recreate new memories. For example, you can even do visualizations where a story that was terrible, you add a different ending and you visualize it happening. Or if you're having, you intentionally create new memories in your present of things that are enjoyable for you, like creativity and things like that. And then that takes you to that happy, fuzzy place. And then, for example, I have a flower here and I can smell it and hold that happy feeling that it's giving me and practice holding it in. And you can even have an amulet as a symbol of it, that every time you have a happy moment you hold it, or practice journaling and counting everything with gratitude. Practice having a gratitude list every day and just practice staying on those happy fuzzy feelings and practice retaining them in your gut, in your stomach. And the last tip is create new habits. If you don't know how to cope, for example, in a healthy, resilient way, I have a lot of webinars that I've hosted, and you're welcome to join my Facebook group too, and the link is here in my channel. Find who can teach you and find resources. Stay proactive to learn how to cope. I know that's not something they teach us when we're growing up in schools or anywhere. Now as adults, it's a challenge, part of our emotional intelligence, to learn how to cope. And I'm not undermining how serious trauma is, but for the purposes of this video, I hope this was helpful and it helps you go from where you are, start planning where you want to be. Don't forget that I also offer free resources. Below there's the links for my top 7 personal development books, a quiz that it gives you a customized guide that to match your answers. And if you want to learn more about my programs, you can visit bossofmyfeelings.com for more emotional intelligence tools. So first I would like to talk about, oh, my hair.